they created this alert. So the keyword for Alexa was Alexa intruder alert, and then turns off all the lights, turns the volume of the speaker system to 100, says via Alexa, so you have chosen death, and then it plays the only thing they fear is you track from the Doom official soundtrack.
This is a story that I got off Tinternet. I was working in IT as a computer operator, and I was told to hire the first person who walked in the door. So I did. One day, our removable 300 meg disk drive crashed, and we found out that the operator had been overwriting the full backups with the incremental backups.
What?
I was at my desk, and all of a sudden, the main file server for the entire company just went offline like that.
Ooh.
I mean, it just vanished. So I ran upstairs into the data room and opened the door and stepped in, and I heard a big splash. So basically, the entire floor was covered in about 2 or 3 centimeters with water.
Whoa.
Stupidity of people and stupidity of developers and
I still get worried about it today. So thanks very much for joining in, everybody. You catch us during a keyboard conversation, of all things. Which do you prefer, mechanical or not? So welcome to this week's podcast. We're extending on from last week, and whereby it's Halloween this time of year. So last year we did sort of more spooky stories, I guess, when it comes to sort of IT related elements. And this week we're going to be doing a little bit more, slightly closer to home IT scary stories, really, I suppose. Things related to our what we've seen in the world and everyday life, and just IT going bad. So by all means, throw some suggestions. If you have any suggestions for future ones, we'll probably do the same thing again next year. So please throw them in the comments. But I look forward to sharing some nasty stuff. But before that, keyboard chat. Okay, mine's a mechanical as well. So what are you thinking, Christian? Is it more volume? What do you prefer? There you go. Wow, it's like half of yours is missing.
Yeah.
But I got it. I got everything that's missing on his side. I got it attached to mine.
I shipped the missing part to Germany.
Yes,
wow, you got one of those sort of spread out ones where you can have your hands on either side.
It's good for good for ergonomics, you know. And also, this is what my team always makes fun of me about. It's this ergonomical mouse, but I just love it. I just love it. I will take it to be with me everywhere. So,
do you have like one of those sideways on mouse? I didn't see that at the end of the day. Do you have one of those as well, where it's like sideways?
Yeah,
like that?
Exactly. It's like a Sidewinder thing.
I have a touchpad instead. So.
Wow, an external thing. Just wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
External touchpad.
And does that what, instead of a mouse? So you've not had a mouse for a while. Yeah. Do you not find that more difficult to use though, from the point of view of your hand?
No, not at all. I'm really happy with it, actually.
Ooh. Interesting.
Ooh. Oh, okay. I can see touchpads going up in the world.
Well, send a link. I would just I want to see how that looks, because it looks really sleek, like nothing.
Okay.
For everybody listening, Christian, maybe you can tell what you showed us.
Yes,
it's an Apple Magic touchpad.
Okay.
Oh, so basically, and that means it's 350 quid then, doesn't it? Let's be honest. It's got the word Apple at the top of it.
It's not cheap. It isn't, but it replicates the mouse pad on my Mac.
Okay.
But it's larger, right? And I can place it wherever I want. So I really enjoy using that. I love it, actually.
And do you also have to charge it? Do you have to charge it on the touch thing, like the Apple Pencil?
They actually designed this properly, so the charging is on the back.
They learned. Nice.
Yes, you don't have to have your mouse upside down to charge it, which is the most. I think that's the most non-Apple design thing ever on the Magic Mouse. It's crazy.
Did you see that meme where they Apple was about to do a car once?
Yeah, there was rumors about a car. Yeah.
Exactly. And they had that meme where somebody switched the car upside down to load the
you had to flip the car to charge it. Yeah, that's
so great.
Right. I quite like that.
That
have a Magic
Mouse.
I quite like
an IT fail, right?
Yes, no doubt. Right. Okay. Before we talking of IT fails and talking of our podcast last week, actually, we talked about Roombas going to war last week, and I'd just like to state that Christian has shared a beautiful image with us of essentially the 4 horsemen of home defense, which is 4 separate Roombas, one with a chainsaw attached, one with knives. Please.
The other 2 were there's one with a syringe on it, with blood in it, marked HIV.
Nice.
Which is crazy. It's an idea. And I guess the last one was a gun, a 9mm gun.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure how they're getting the trigger mechanism to work, but I don't care. I think it's still good. It's literally they duct taped a 9mm gun to a Roomba.
Yeah. And the idea is you couple these with Alexa or some other home automation system, right? So they created this alert. I mean, I'm not sure how well it works, but it's kind of funny. So the keyword for Alexa was Alexa intruder alert, and then turns off all the lights, turns the volume of the speaker system to 100, says via Alexa, "So you have chosen death," and then it plays the only thing they fear is you track from the Doom official soundtrack. And the last kind of step in the automation is release every Roomba. So it's a home intrusion defense system, I guess.
Nice.
It's pretty much, their ankles are in serious trouble. That much is for certain. Yeah. Especially with the chainsaw. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, well, yeah. So obviously,
the only thing missing there is a Monty Python quote: "Is I'll bite your legs off" or something like that.
Just a flesh wound.
I can still spit on you.
Get over here and I'll bite your ankles. Right, so okay, so let's move this on. So we were talking last week about, I don't know where we're going with this. We're talking about sort of horror stories with regard to IT. So we did a number of them last week, which were more related to spooky stories, but this week we're more related to, I don't know, technical fails, technical horror stories. So who would you like to start us off? Christian Lehrer, do you want to go first?
I can go first with one of the...
Go for it.
One of the things that I took as a learning for my SCCM implementations when I did that back then. Nowadays, it's it's 10 years ago, to be honest, where a university in the US, they used SCCM. And for those who don't know, SCCM at that time was called System Center Configuration Manager. And it is still largely used to manage large amount of computer systems, be it servers, be it clients, mostly Windows-based. And it's widely popular, especially in large organizations. And it has a load of features. One of them is bare metal installing new systems. So you could set up a server, a so-called PXE server, and whenever a device was configured to reach out for a PXE server, it would get a new image, a new Windows image deployed to the system. This would be done by so-called task sequences in SCCM. And one could password save those OSD task sequences, but you could also choose to not do, with potentially fatal consequences.
So you can just arbitrarily overwrite machines, that sort of stuff. Is this the...
Maybe. Yeah. By mistake, somebody... So they set up this thing where basically idle devices or old devices, unused devices, when they reboot, they would get their image newly installed. I think it was Windows 7 deployment time at that time. They would get a Windows 7 deployment. Everything should be fine. They tested it, all worked well, and then they released their task sequence to everything that they had. Unfortunately, they did not take out the server systems. So the next time, after patching and the servers rebooted, what happened is that they also started getting new PXE images. This suddenly stopped then when the SCCM servers themselves tried to update themselves with new Windows 7 operating systems. So they basically screwed up all IT infrastructure.
Is that possible? That's quite impressive.
That was possible. And I think it still is if you're doing it right. You can still produce a thing like that. But I think that is one of those stories every SCCM consultant will tell you. Don't do it. Just don't do it that way.
No,
that's quite impressive.
It's not even. It's not just an urban legend in a way either, because I've actually seen this happen locally as well. I had a customer of mine that called me. They needed help reinstalling all of their VMware ESXi servers because when they patched them during an outage or during a planned downtime and rebooted them, they reinstalled Windows Server instead after booting. So basically, those servers were set to boot from PXE before local devices. And they used Windows deployment services. They didn't have the full SCCM thing, but that's still a part of SCCM, the deployment services part. So they offered out an image for 2012 server or whatever version it was, with no confirmation, nothing, just delete all local drives and reinstall.
Oh my!
That was kind of the thing. That was supposed to only happen on a given VLAN. So they were actually going to use that to install VMs with. So if they create a new VM, put it in the correct VLAN, it would automatically get Windows installed. And I think they were doing a data center migration and moving physical servers. So they shut down the entire environment, moved it to the new site, connected everything and booted it. And they automatically installed Windows Server on top of ESXi for everything.
Nice. That's how you switch to Hyper-V.
Yeah, there's definitely one way of doing it. Wow. Who knew? I bet that's not in Microsoft's migration plan, but it probably should be.
Goodness.
Yeah. Luckily, they actually had all of the VMs on a separate fiber channel SAN. So the Windows installation wasn't able to delete all of those volumes. So we just had to reinstall ESXi and point it back to the LUNs from the storage array, and we were up and running again. There was a bit of panic for a while there.
Well, this is it.
Totally understandable.
Oh, yeah. Thank heavens he wore the brown trousers. That sort of situation. But is it? It's amazing how destructive this stuff can be. I mean, we talk a lot, we have talked a lot on the podcast about automation. But essentially, automation can be horrendously destructive if not done well. You really have to keep your eye on it.
Yeah, I mean, automation is a really effective way of destroying things at scale.
Absolutely.
So if you do it wrong, and you haven't tested it properly, or you do some misconfiguration, as was the case with this customer, right? It worked as intended, but not on the
CrowdStrike.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
CrowdStrike. Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, yeah, okay, good.
Yeah,
nice. That is good.
So it's effective.
Absolutely. And I don't want to be in that shoes if that happens. Oh man.
But also, okay. So moving on to another one. Essentially, it can also be down to the fact that people get in the way. This is a story that I got off Tinternet. Essentially, I was working in IT as a computer operator, and I was told to hire the first person who walked in the door. So I did. It worked out well for a while. Backed up our data on a big reel-to-reel tape. Why are all these things quite old? I don't know. I'm losing this relatively modern. Maybe it's because it was easier to be terrible back then. I don't know. And in a reel-to-reel tape, doing incremental backups on weekdays with full backups every Friday. One day, our removable 300 meg disk drive crashed. Ooh. And we found out that the operator had been overwriting the full backups with the incremental backups.
What?
He explained, I've got hot dates on Friday night and the full backups were taking so long, so I couldn't be bothered to wait. So he'd switched them so that it was doing an incremental at all times. The problem is the fact that most of their order entry system that they'd written hadn't been updated in about sort of 6 months. So therefore, it was not on any of the incremental backups. So he said, luckily, the consultant who wrote the original program was still with the business, and it took us 2 weeks from scratch, full time, to write it again from nothing. Needless to say, I verified every backup every day for the rest of my career. I'm very much there. So yeah.
But backups are useless unless you try to restore them.
Absolutely. And it just goes to prove, obviously this is back in the day with tapes, but people still do that today. It just happens to be going to disk or the cloud these days.
And it's not 300 megabytes anymore. It's more like 300 terabytes.
Very true.
Yeah.
Well, if you get a machine that's 300 megabytes these days, you're quite impressed.
Yeah. I've tried restoring from tape after a disaster in my data center once. I could do that story as well.
Go.
So I actually had a flooding once in a data center.
Please tell me it wasn't the toilet next door.
No, but I'll get to that part. So the thing was, I worked for a shipping company for a number of years.
Okay, hold on a minute. If the shipping company is in a ship, that's just a bad idea.
No, it wasn't quite that bad, but it's kind of funny anyway.
Could you play Xbox on the ship? That's the important question.
So
gamesmanship. Sorry. Okay, keep going. Come on, keep going.
So we had an on-premises data center in our office building, right? So it was located in the floor beneath the kind of entrance floor or whatever. Yep. So you down one flight of stairs, and you could get to the. Well, it wasn't a data center; it was a data room.
Yeah.
Okay.
Understood.
But yeah. We had a bunch of racks in there with servers in. We had some cooling systems as well. And we figured that having one cooling system wasn't redundant enough. So we needed to have a second one to ensure that we had failover capabilities if one of them failed. Ironically, that's what caused the problem. So the guys that came to kind of install the new system, they had to drill through the wall and put the outside part of the cooling system on the wall on the floor above it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they drilled through the concrete walls, put some pipes in there, everything was okay, and the cooling system worked. Perfect. Then a couple of weeks later, this was during the winter in Norway, so it was pretty cold. A few weeks later, I was at my desk, and all of a sudden, the main file server for the entire company just went offline like that.
Ooh.
I mean, it just vanished. Everything else was okay, but one server just vanished from our network. So I ran upstairs into the data room and opened the door and stepped in, and I heard a big splash. So basically, the entire floor was covered in about 2 or 3 centimeters with water.
Whoa!
I look up at the wall, and I see there's running water through the holes that they drilled for the cooling system from the outside and into the data room, where it physically hit the top of the one server we hadn't put in a rack yet because it was still a tower server. So all of that water that was basically now on the floor had run through that tower server and onto the floor, which explains why it suddenly vanished. Right?
Traditionally, electronics and water doesn't mix very well. I don't know why by the way that is, but
So it turns out they forgot to seal the hole on both sides of it. So the pipes were just going through a hole in the wall. On the outside, there was a flower bed that was kind of frozen. And all the snow on the top of the roof of the building has started to melt and landed on that side into the flower bed, racing up to the hole in the wall, and then it just went through, right? Luckily, there was a small hole in the floor in the data center down to the downstairs bathroom. We didn't know this because it was behind the racks. There used to go there was some large IBM type networking cable back in the day that had a plug this size. That used to go through that hole. So that hole actually ensured that enough water went to the floor beneath it, so that the UPSs on the bottom of our racks were like half a centimeter from being flooded as well. So if we hadn't had that little hole in one of the corners, we probably would have been out of everything.
I gotta say, yeah, it does sound like it sounds like you're just trying some sort of weird way of cooling your servers down by just freezing melt water. This is guaranteed to work.
Let's try water cooling, right?
A little bit early in its generation, though. You're a little bit new.
So this was basically the only server we hadn't virtualized yet, basically because of the amount of files on it, right?
Yep.
So that kind of sped up the process of getting a virtualized copy of it up and running. Let's put it that way. But the thing is, we had backups back then with TSM, Tivoli, on tape and a tape robot. So to make it a long story a bit shorter, it took us a week to recover all the files into basically reading tapes for a week.
I've got to say,
to get all the files back.
And this is the thing, and it's be very interesting to see how many people sort of listening to this realize that that's the amount of time frame that we're talking about this sort of stuff. And it's probably not that dissimilar these days. If someone's got 50 or 100 terabytes worth of data, which is not unrealistic these days, physics dictates it's going to take a long time. That's just the nature of the game.
The problem with our restore was that we had file-based backups, right? So we had to restore a couple of million small files.
Yep.
And the overhead of reading that from tape and a distributed tape system like TSM, which spread all the data over a bunch of tapes, the amount of time actually recovering data was less than the time it took to find the data on the tapes and restore it.
Yeah, exactly.
The second problem we had with that was that from an IT perspective, we could look at all the systems and see, okay, everything's up and running. The only things missing is people's home directories and a few file shares and stuff like that. No big deal. We could be without that for a week. That's not a big problem. What we didn't realize is, in order to make things easy for ourselves, we had put the drivers for the Oracle-based CRM system we had on a shared location. So every client used the shared location to get their drivers to be able to access the CRM system. So in our end, we had green lights on everything. The CRM system was working. Everything was okay.
Just can't get to it.
It took a few hours, and then one of the employees called us and said, "When's the CRM system coming back online?" And we said, "It's online. It's up and running." Well, none of us can connect to it, so we actually had to stop the restore because we didn't know when those files would appear back into the new virtualized version of the file server, and restore just those files and make sure that all the mappings were in place so they could start working, and then restore everything. So we started having to restore things in batches because originally we just said, well, restore everything, get it all back in place. But then we didn't know what happened, right?
Yeah,
so
it's true. Yeah.
Backups are one thing, but actually being able to, which systems are dependent on what, and what do we need to get in place first before we can get everything else in place?
Yeah.
That was something we hadn't thought about at all.
Yeah, and I think that's probably fairly common these days as well. And this is where the whole sort of ransomware thing comes in as well, isn't it? Because you need to think about what you need. And I think we've been talking about it for years with regard to disaster recovery, but I still don't think certainly smaller businesses probably don't really get that level of depth. Maybe very large organizations do, or also because they have staff that are dedicated to that one task. But I still think it's relatively rare.
But from our end, everything was up and running, right?
Yeah. We did our job. Yeah. Blow the users. I mean, good.
So, and the ultimate irony of everything is we needed more redundancy for cooling, which brought down the company, basically. So there's
good times. There's another one with related to temperature, so I'll share this one as well. The CEO of the company broke into the server room because he felt the fact that we were paying too much for cooling with regard to our servers. So he switched the thermostat from 21 degrees to 41 degrees, understanding there's going to make sweet savings on his expensive electricity. I'm not going to tell you which country this is in, by the way, but it does relate to one of our members. He found out exactly 2 hours later that not only did he cook 3 of the 8 servers in the server room, but he'd also changed the order from buying a cooling system to buying a cooling/heating system when he installed it last year. So essentially managed to fry everything by going, yeah, no, it's fine. And there was a thing a while back whereby it's like, oh, yeah. Oh, you can run servers much hotter than, Google run their servers really hot, this, that, the other. I remember seeing it a few years ago. Does that exist? Or was that all FUD as well? But yeah, 41 degrees. Yeah, don't do it. Not a good idea.
Wow.
I know.
Wow. Data centers. So much fun.
Oh, yes. Have you ever been in a data center where the cooling's failed? And I mean a proper data center. Yeah, terrifying that is. You can see all the lights going on and you're sitting there where sweating buckets thinking, wow. And if you have to go round to the warm aisle, because there's a cool aisle, a warm aisle, you have to walk round to the warm aisle at the back of the thing. It's absolutely, it's like us going into a sauna.
No.
So yeah, don't recommend
I was once sitting directly in a very, very small data room, and I was happy to sit there because it was the only cooled room in the whole building. And I accepted the loudness just to be cool in the summer. That was nice.
We actually at the same company in the same data room or center or whatever. When that was a couple of years later when we had both the cooling systems. The problem with them was that they were both operated with the exact same remote control. So if you...
Good idea. That's a great idea.
That piece of redundancy we didn't think about, right? So if you just clicked it once, you turned off both. So we had a consultant working there for a while, and he got kind of... all the draft hated his neck, so he was kind of uncomfortable. So he just took one of the remotes and just pointed it to the one straight above his head and turned it off.
Oh.
And left once he was done, but he forgot to turn them back on. So the morning after, I actually had a Citrix server that time that didn't respond. So I went into the data center and figured out, I don't know how many degrees there were in there, but it was more than 21, to put it that way. Yeah. The physical server that had actually crashed then was so hot that I couldn't touch it when I tried to take it out of the rack. So I could probably fry eggs on it. And I was a 1U server in the middle of the rack. That was the only one that was actually affected by this. So we turned everything on again, took off the lid on that thing, and put it directly under the airflow from the AC unit. And an hour later, we powered it back on, and it was still working. And it ran for a few years after that as well.
I've got to say, yeah, that's my experience as well. We've all had instances, I'm sure, whereby your air conditioning fails inside your server room, and so you come in the morning and the place is literally a sauna, and you think like, what the hell? But yeah, it's the amount of times whereby we've had alerts and alarms, but nothing went down. The only reason we notice because the first thing you do is you go in and make sure all the servers are okay, and it's like. Yeah. You get hit by a wall of heat as you walk into the server room and think, oh, struth. But yeah, no, it's amazing how much they can cope with.
After those two incidents, I've never not recommended having both water sensors and temperature sensors with alerts from any customer I've talked to.
Absolutely.
Basically based on my own horrible experiences.
But then there's also those incidents where you know that something is not working and you're heading to the data center and everything is fine and back up again, right? Mm-hmm. Did you have such experiences also?
Go on then. So things have gone wrong and then all of a sudden they kick back in and start working again.
Yeah, you're going there trying to see what's happening. It might go on for a week. Suddenly things coming here and there. And then you go in there to check and everything is green. Everything is fine. I heard some stories like that. Not being myself somehow involved, but
go on then.
Might be that girl in the red dress from the previous episode.
It could be.
Or the typical cleaning person when they still had access to the data center, right? I heard that story where I was working way several years ago, where they just came in and plugged out something to clean up.
Yep. I mentioned that in our pre-show chat as well.
Okay. Didn't see that.
I've actually experienced that.
Is that really a thing? I actually thought. I'm sure this has been. I'm sure there was a thing where this is a hospital story as well, whereby it was always one place whereby people died more, one bed where people died more than anywhere else, and it turned out it was the lady unplugging one of the machines to plug in her Hoover. Yeah, so they could never figure out what was wrong.
No, that is exactly what. Well, not. In a hospital.
No, but even so, it just seems insane.
This one isn't related to my not being able to bury people story.
Okay, that's fine.
This actually happened with a customer of mine. I was working there. We were migrating from Novell NetWare to Windows.
Oh, so this must have been there. You see, that's a proper networking software. That is,
and printing. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, 98, 99, somewhere around there.
There's an email system that deduplicates itself. I mean, seriously, who would want one of those?
Yeah, welcome to old people talking about old IT stuff.
Yes.
So just to get that out of the way, the shipping company I work for used Lotus Domino as well. So
perfect.
We've been doing this for a while.
As it should.
No, the thing was, I was working there on the migration path from Novell to Windows servers, and they had this strange thing where a couple of days, a couple of nights a week, one of the physical servers just disappeared from the network, was away for 10, 15 minutes. Something like that, and then came back up again, and they could see in the logs that the power had been cut, and it restarted again once the power was back on. So we couldn't figure out what was happening. So we actually decided this is most likely to happen on a Tuesday or on a Thursday, whatever it was. So we decided to actually sit in the data center, in the server room, and just wait and see what happens. So we were sitting there, a couple of guys and myself, and all of a sudden the door opens, there comes a hand in, and then it just removes one of the sockets from the wall and plugs in another one. And then the door closes. And the person doing this didn't even open the door fully, just opened it a bit and just did this, right? So we opened the door and looked out, and there was the cleaning person going around vacuuming the carpets right outside that room. So that was actually, I've experienced that as well. It sounds like an urban myth.
It does sound like an urban myth, doesn't it? That's right.
But I actually witnessed this myself.
Don't get out of the car, etc., etc.
So...
boy, it's like the Blair Witch.
Randomly unplugging things in a data center is also a bad idea.
Yes.
Even if so, they should have a robot vacuum. I mean, it would swear.
Exactly. That's right.
It could swear at you, but it didn't cut the power.
With or without a chainsaw. I mean,
with a chainsaw, it could cut the power again.
Yeah,
so
that would be a problem.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, fair point. Okay, I've got an interesting one again. This is related to email, so I'll throw this one in as well. Again, this is a story from Tinternet. So years ago, I worked for a software development company that had just migrated from Lotus Notes to Exchange 4.0.
I smell something incoming.
Don't cry,
here.
Christian. Don't cry. The users had some issues getting the new email client, and the administrator took some time to get used to the Exchange backend. But after about a month of use, the new email server was working okay, but it crashed. And it turns out that the drive was almost full. No one had thought to back up the email server because it was new to the system. And it turns out the database logs were growing so large that, and they weren't being truncated down because there was no backup process running. So we figured this out and we started to back up the new server, and that managed to then clear out the logs. However, we did realize that we had greatly under-provisioned the hard drive space for the server. Non-deduplication, anybody? I mean, is it just me? Maybe not. We sent out messages to all users in our system asking them to refrain from sending large messages. You know what's coming. Until we solved the issue. One of our sales managers thought this would be a perfect time with his fancy new email client to hit reply all with a video of a disgruntled employee bashing his head against a monitor, and completely took the entire system down for everybody. It took 2 days later to get all the drives to get it back up and running again. And the network admin wasn't so lucky and lost his job. And you sit there thinking, like, seems a bit harsh, but there you go. I think the sales manager probably should have lost his job. But yeah, it just goes to prove giving customers information, maybe sometimes a good thing, sometimes not so much. But there you go.
Yeah, like the auto reply wars. I had that once where several systems, like I think it was an external vendor and our system, and somehow they were just like doing auto reply war. It was really auto reply war. I don't know how long it took to get that down and to get everything working again. It was way in the beginning of my IT career, also with some stupid old Exchange version, but I still remember swearing a lot that day about stupidity of people and stupidity of developers, and
I still get worried about it today. When you sort of say, "Oh yeah, I like to put an out of office on," and it says, "Do you want to do it internally?" And you go, "Yes." Then do you want to do it externally?
Yeah, sure, go on.
Do I want to do it externally?
Yes, you want.
Yeah, but you should be able to these days. But be right. My head goes, no. You'll end up with a sort of flame war between auto replies.
Yeah, well, newer implementations of this have a checkbox with a reply once to each sender. So
exactly.
That helps.
Yeah, just kind of.
But basically, the reply all option should basically be locked down, removed, and thrown away. It shouldn't be available to anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it is, especially when it's an all company email.
Yeah.
Can you please remove me from the list?
Unsubscribe.
And me also. And me also. And me also. Yeah, perfect. I think we all had that.
There's a couple of horror stories on the internet about sort of people sending, and I do mean this, high security documents, and they're sending them to multiple people, which they should never be doing anyway because they're high security documents. And those people are then replying all and including other people and going, "Are you supposed to be sending these?" And it's like, well, hold on a minute. So what you're saying is you don't feel that this was secure enough, so you decided you'd invite more people into the mix.
Yeah, because they have to see what your mistake was.
Yeah, that's just
you have to understand. That sounds very German.
I think it might have been American, but yeah, go.
Oh man. But I also have one more story, which was a project I was working in also several years ago now. It was a project in a production space where production IT had to be virtualized also, consolidated on ESX and so on. Everything was working out pretty good. And then there was that one system, that one production line system where the production people, they got in the vendor set up something on just a clunky old type of hardware sitting around somewhere in the production area. And IT got wind of it and thought, hey, we gotta virtualize this, right? You can't just be driving this. What happens if this hardware dies, right? And thank you. Let's do that. And so they set up everything, brought up a test system, virtualized everything. Looked to be very, very good. All the tests were very positive. And then came the day of actually switching the live system over to the new live production system, which was completely virtualized. And they switched it over and immediately it didn't work anymore. But everything was completely configured the same way as it was in the physical system and in the test system.
Okay.
But it didn't work. Just plainly didn't work. And I think it was days later, where they had to switch back, obviously, because production needs to keep running and so on. So they had, I think, 2 or 3 times trying to switch over, and all the time it just failed immediately. And someone, by accident, more or less, somebody found out that, hey, there's a strange coincidence between the physical old one and the test system, the new virtual one. The IP is ending on a 1. The IPv4 address is ending on a 1. And it's not both .1, but the physical one was .101, for example, and the virtual one was 131.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
And they both worked.
Okay.
And the live system, it ended on not a 1. Like, let's say 123. Okay. And it didn't work. And so somebody just out of stupidity and out of being for any other idea said, hey, come on, let's just switch the IP address and see if that helps. And it helped. So somehow
like
the vendor implemented their own network addition to the IPv4 stack. However,
as you do,
yeah. What you
and they somehow, I don't know what they did, but they managed to get their networking stack only work if the server IP is ending on a 1.
Wow.
That's was ridiculous. The solution. Everything was set up correctly. They just switched the IP address to ending on a 1, and it worked out of nowhere.
How the hell?
How the effing hell?
Yeah, exactly.
And why?
More why? It is more why. How? Yeah, I suppose possible. Yeah, let's hard code our software so it only works on one selection of IP addresses. That sounds like a great idea.
So crazy, and it was really days and days of work to figure that out.
Yeah.
Let's tie it to a specific one, and hopefully one that is already mostly in use by a router or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's pick that one.
Yeah, and you get in 256. That'll freak it out.
That was causing a lot of headache. Definitely.
Yeah, but I mean, lots of weird stuff happens. I recently had problems from my home network reaching a bunch of Norwegian newspapers online.
Were you spamming them? I mean, what was going on?
No. I mean, they simply didn't respond, so I couldn't understand why. I could do DNS. I could ping them. That was fine, but I couldn't actually get HTTPS traffic.
Oh, weird.
And then I figured out, okay, there's a few newspapers that I can't actually read online, and I figured that they are all owned by the same parent company. So I kind of figured, okay, this has to be something in their kind of IT stack that is limiting my IP from actually getting traffic.
You blacklisted?
For some reason, I probably was. And I don't know why. I haven't been doing anything fun lately on my network, so I couldn't understand why. So how do you fix that? How do you? I mean, I get an IP address from my ISP. It's not a static one. But I can't really
force a change,
or can I?
Well, you can change your ISP, I guess, but yeah.
I went into I have my own Unify gateway running at home, so I went in and spoofed my MAC address to a random one, so I got assigned a new IP, and then everything worked again. So somehow my home IP address was blocked by changing the MAC address on my external interface. I got a new one from my ISP, and then everything was fine.
Wow.
Bizarre, man. Seriously.
How do people troubleshoot things like that?
No, nobody does. Nobody does unless they happen to be an IT guru, do they? I mean, that's just... Even I wouldn't have done anything like that.
My first thought was that your Pi-hole would gone rogue and all the newspapers are just selling advertisements anymore or something like that.
Or somebody else on your network has been doing dodgy stuff, Christian. That's the other possibility, let's be honest.
Your robot cleaner, for example.
Maybe your Roomba has been having a go. That sort of stuff. That's possibly it. Thank you very much, guys. That was great fun. I've got to say, thoroughly enjoyed that episode. Thanks very much for all your stories. I've got to say, I chose a lot of mine from the internet. You chose all of yours from real life, which is far better. So thanks for that. It's fascinating.
We have the battle scores.
Indeed, yeah, that's right, and the brown trousers. So thanks again, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.